It's time for Recipe of the Day. I have been avoiding telling you how to make classic stuffed peppers because I find them a pain to make, but sometimes you just want that cozy classic comfort food and then you gotta do it, right? And so I'm gonna tell you how. Okay, first up, you need some rice. You can use leftover cooked rice, or you can buy cooked rice, or you can cook the rice just for this. You need 2 cups of cooked rice. So if you're using just like standard long grain white rice, which is the classic, you're gonna need 1 cup of that uncooked, and then you're going to cook it according to package directions. But you can use brown rice, wild rice. You could use a different grain or carb, something like farro or quinoa is going to work. You just need 2 cups of it cooked. While that is cooking, you're going to get your beef going. So heat a tablespoon of olive oil in a large skillet and then add a small onion that you've chopped up. Cook that for a couple minutes just until it's softened. And then you're adding a pound of lean ground beef or whatever ground meat you want to use. You can use a less lean ground beef. You can use ground chicken, ground turkey, even ground pork. Just once it's done cooking, you're going to want to drain off any fat because we do not want this to be liquidy. So you're going to cook that ground meat in the skillet with a half teaspoon of salt, a half teaspoon of black pepper, and 2 cloves of garlic that you've minced up. And you're just cooking that and stirring until it's cooked through. It'll take about 6 to 7 minutes. Like I said, drain off the fat. And then you're going to stir in that 2 cups of cooked rice and 2 cups of tomato sauce. Now, I will just back up and say if you want to use something other than tomato sauce, for instance, canned diced tomatoes or like Rotel or anything like that, you want 2 cups of it, but you're going to have to thicken it because it's going to be too watery. So what I would say to do is back up a moment. Once your ground beef or ground meat is fully cooked and you've drained the fat off, sprinkle 2 tablespoons of all-purpose white flour over top of that beef in the skillet still. Stir that in, then add your 2 cups of watery tomato stuff, whatever it is you're using. Bring that up to a simmer, stirring it often, and it's going to thicken up. Not exactly as thick as tomato sauce, but thick enough that we're not going to have water leaking out of our peppers, okay? So you want 2 cups of that sauce added there, and then if you're going to simmer it or do the flour or whatever, and then 2 cups of cooked rice get stirred into there after. Give that a taste and add more salt and pepper if you'd like. I'll just note here that I have not instructed that you include any other seasonings because I don't know what's in your tomato sauce. So if you just used a plain tomato sauce, you might want to go in with a little bit of oregano, dried basil. You could do a little rosemary, sage, or thyme. You could make these Cajun, go in with some Cajun seasoning, whatever you'd like to do in there. Just give it a taste at this point and add what you'd like. Really, the filling is going to be what it tastes like at this point. So do what you'd like to it. Now you're going to take that off the heat and you're going to prep your peppers. Like I said, stuffed peppers are a bit of a pain, and the reason they're a pain is you have to make that rice, you've got to make that ground beef, then you have to get your peppers ready, stuff them, and then they still have to bake for long enough to get tender. But there is a little shortcut. So if you are somebody who can multitask really well in the kitchen and you want to do this while your rice and beef are cooking, you can pre-cook the peppers so that they're softer and then they won't need as long to bake. It cuts the baking time in half about. So if you don't pre-cook the peppers, they're going to take 40 to 45 minutes in the oven. If you do pre-cook them, they're going to take about 25 minutes. Whether you are pre-cooking them or not, you first have to get them ready. Classic stuffed peppers are a whole pepper per person. And so to do that, you are going to cut out the top stem of the pepper or take a whole slice off of that stem side. And then you reach in and get any core membranes and seeds out from inside of there. And I will just say that the alternative to this, if you want a smaller portion, I find a little bit easier to eat also is you can cut the peppers in half. So you put it like vertically, so it's standing on its base with the stem side up, and you're essentially cutting through the stem all the way down. And then you're going to open it up and then use a paring knife to just cut out the seeds and core and membrane, leaving the stem on. The stem kind of acts as a little wall so that the filling doesn't go out that end. Okay. So you can do that. I find it just as pretty and just, like I said, easier to eat. And I will link to a post in the show notes for how to cut peppers that actually shows the 2 different ways to do it. And there's actually pictures in the Classic Stuffed Peppers recipe that I am talking about today, that also shows how to do that. So if you aren't sure what I'm saying, you can go and look at those. You will also see there that I have advice for if your peppers don't stand up nicely, if they are toppling over, you can just take a very thin slice off of the bottom, not cutting all the way through the pepper. There is enough flesh there that you can just make tiny little slices on those bumpy bottoms to even it out, and then they will stand up nicely for you. If you're doing the halved peppers, you don't really have to worry about that. Although sometimes I've had peppers that want to really lean one way over another, and you can do the same thing on the base where you want it to lay flat. Just take a thin slice off of there and it will lay flat for you. Okay, once your peppers are all ready, you can decide if you want to pre-cook them or not. If you're going to pre-cook them, you put them in a pot with their open side up, like where the stem was, and you fill them all with water in the pot. That's going to stop them from floating when you also fill the pot surrounding them with water, because you want them to be well submerged. Put a lid on, put them over high heat, bring it up to a boil, and then drop the heat down to a medium low, so it's still kind of like a hard simmer, and you're going to simmer them just until they're tender, about 3 to 4 minutes. Then transfer them to ice water so that they stop cooking. So you see, that's kind of a bit of a pain also. I honestly would rather just stuff them and put them in the oven for longer than go through that, but I know that some people do prefer it, so that's how you do it. Okay, whether you have pre-cooked those peppers or not, they are going open side up again, like where the stem side was, up in a baking dish, and you are filling those with your ground beef mixture. Just divide it evenly between your 6 bell peppers, and then they go into the oven, a 350 degree Fahrenheit oven, until they are tender. Like I said, it's going to be 40 to 45 minutes. If you haven't pre-cooked them, 20 to 25 minutes. I mean, they're already tender if you have pre-cooked them, but you're kind of letting the flavors blend and really getting everything nice and hot. 20 to 25 minutes. If you want to test if your pepper is tender, you take a toothpick and you insert it near the top of the pepper. If it slides through easily, then it's ready. At that point, you take the baking dish out of the oven, and then you're going to divide about half a cup of tomato sauce among the peppers. It's like a heaping tablespoon each that you put onto each pepper, kind of spread it out on top of the filling there, and then you're going to top that with some shredded cheese. I use mozzarella usually just because I think that's what my mom used to use. Something about those Italian flavors, tomato sauce, ground beef, kind of like spaghetti-ish. So mozzarella cheese, but it's also great with cheddar or any kind of cheese that you like that will melt well. You're going to want about 2 cups of that shredded cheese, and you're dividing that among those peppers. And then the whole baking dish and the peppers are going back into the oven just until the cheese is melted, because everything else is hot and ready. It's going to be about 5 minutes, and then you dig in. What a classic. I know, a little bit annoying, but worth it when you're craving those meals from your childhood. I love this one. I will put the link to this recipe in the show notes for this podcast episode, or you could head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and get it there. Everything there is arranged by date, so it's helpful to know that today is August 17th of 2025. And I have a favor to ask: if you make this recipe and love it, or if you have made any of the recipes from Cook the Story or the Cookful and you love them, I would love it if you would go and leave a comment and a 5-star rating. Comments let everybody know what you're making and how you changed it, what you did, what you liked about it. And that is wonderful for me to see. I love the feedback. And then that 5-star rating, that brings more people to my business and helps me support all this work that me and my team are doing, because people see those 5-star ratings when they're searching for recipes on Google, and then they are more likely to click and come and find me, find the podcast, become part of our community. I would really appreciate it if you would do that. Comment and 5-star rating on any of the recipes from Cook the Story or the Cookful that you love. Thank you so much. I'm Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, the all-new chicken cookbook, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. I hope you have a great day. Let's get cooking.